Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma faqihna fi ad-din wa 'allimna at-ta'wil ya rabbal alameen. Alhamdulillah, we have arrived at the chapter of Tayammum. And Tayammum is translated as dry ablution, or the substitute for making wudu when there is no water. قال المصنف رحمهم الله ابن قدامة المقدسي, he says, باب التيمم وصفته أن يضرب بيديه على الصعيد الطيب ضربة واحدة فيمسح بهما وجهه وكفيه لقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لعمار إنما كان يكفيك هكذا وضرب بيديه الأرض فمسحه. The author rahimahumullah, he starts off by describing how to make tayammum, and he says وصفته, the description of it, the way to make tayammum is أن يضرب بيديه على الصعيد, for you to hit the ground with your two hands. الصعيد الطيب, for you to hit the wholesome ground or the pure ground once with your two hands. ضربة واحدة, hitting it once. فمسح بهما وجهه, and then he wipes his face with the hands. وكفيه, and his hands. And kaf, as we said in the Arabic language, means your hand up to your wrist. That is the definition of al-kaf. And then he brings the hadith of Ammar radiallahu an. He says, it would have been sufficient for you to do like this, and he struck the earth with his hand and he wiped his hand. So he was describing to Ammar radiallahu an how to make tayammum. And then he continues, the author continues, he says, وَإِن تَيَمَّمَ بِأَكْثَرْ مِنْ ضَرْبَةٍ أَوْ مَسَحَ أَكْثَرْ جَازٍ. And if he makes tayammum with more than one hitting, or he wipes more than was required, it is permissible. So if you hit the ground twice, for example, you hit it once, you wipe your face, you hit it another time, and you wipe your hands, that is also permissible. Also, what is permissible is to hit the ground once, wipe your face, hit the ground again twice, and wipe akthar, wipe more than the hand, wipe up to the wrist. Because there is another narration which mentions two hits and wiping up to the elbow. So there is another narration. So the author says that it is okay to do both, right? You can do one hit, or you can do two hits, and wipe the face and the hand, or you can do two hits and wipe the face and the hand up to the elbow. Those are three permissible ways to make tayammum. And they are also from the sunnah, recorded in the sunnah. Then he continues and he says, وَلَهُ شُرُوطٌ أَرْبَعَةٌ, and there are four conditions of tayammum. Now he's going to talk about the four conditions of tayammum. Number one, الْعَجْزُ عَنْ إِسْتِعْمَالِ الْمَاءِ. He is not able to use water. So his inability to use water. إِمَّا لِعَدَمِهِ, either because there is no water, it's a shortage of water and you don't have water to use, so you can't use it. أَوْ خَوْفِ الضَّرَرِ بِاسْتِعْمَالِهِ, or he's afraid he's afraid of harm when he uses it. لِمَرَضٍ أَوْ بَرَدٍ شَدِيد, either from sickness, or he's afraid because the water is extremely cold. For example, sometimes in North America here, it gets very cold, maybe some areas under minus 20 degrees. And if your hot water tank is not working, and you use the freezing cold water, you could get sick. You could get really sick, right? And that is why, there was one Sahaba that came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said that he told him that he made tayammum because the water was too cold. He was afraid he would harm himself, and the Prophet ﷺ approved of it. right? So if the water is too cold, it's extremely cold, and you fear that you'll get sick from using it or you'll harm yourself, then you can make tayammum as a substitute. أو خوف العطش على نفسه أو ماله أو رفيقه أو بهيمته. Or he's afraid of thirst. So he's afraid that he won't have enough water to survive. So for example, you're on a journey, right? You're on a journey and you're crossing through the desert and you have a little bit of water with you. And that water is enough. You know that you need that water to survive. If you make wudu with that water, you might not be able to survive tomorrow because it's a limited amount of water you have, right? In that case, you keep the water for drinking, for preserving your life, and you make tayammum. أو ماله. So, for example, maybe he's afraid that he could be afraid that his animal, right? His animal, maybe his horse or his camel or whatever he's using to travel with needs water. And if he doesn't keep the water for the animal, or for his wealth, and that's part of his wealth, then it will destroy. His wealth will become destroyed because he doesn't feed the animal water, right? So in that case, you make tayammum as well, right? And you don't make wudu. أو رفيقه, or his companion. So, for example, you have water, but you have enough water. You have enough water to travel with. You have enough water to drink. You planned. You have enough water to make wudu for your entire trip. But your friend that you're traveling with, him and his family, they don't have enough water, right? They don't have enough water. So you're afraid that if you use your water, he and his family may suffer. They may not make it. So you give some water to him, and you make tayammum, and you give the water to him and his family to survive, right? So you're afraid for yourself or for others that are traveling with you, even though that's your water that you own, but you're afraid for others. أو بهيمته, or his animal, his riding animal. أو خوف على نفسه أو ماله في طلبه. Or he's afraid for himself. أو ماله في طلبه, or his property. So in some places, in some villages, some parts in the world, they have to go out to get water. They don't just have running water like we have. You open the tap and you get water. They have to leave their home. They have to travel. Maybe they have to walk a mile or two to fetch water and bring it home, right? So he's afraid that if he leaves his house, maybe it's waqt al-fitna, maybe there's a lot of fitn that's going on. He's afraid he may get killed. There's some places if you leave your home and you go out in a certain time of the night, maybe after 12 or after Isha, it's very dangerous. And if you go out, there's a very high possibility that you'll get robbed or you'll get injured or they may murder you, right? In some areas in the world. So he's afraid. He ran out of water at Isha time, and now for Fajr he needs water. But he's afraid to go out of his house. He's afraid to leave his house. What does he do? He stays home and he makes tayammum for Fajr. Or he's afraid for his wealth. Some places, they don't have a secure place for your wealth, right? He lives maybe in a hut, or he lives in a home, but there's no doors on his house, or his house. It's very easy for someone, if he leaves home and he's the only one there, it's very easy for someone to come and take his wealth, right? He has no one else. He's living all alone. He doesn't have anyone else to watch over his wealth. Or he has a shop, and he's the security guard for that shop. For example, he has a shop that has expensive items like gold or silver or jewelry, and he's afraid if he leaves that, people may come and steal his wealth, right? Or may steal the stuff that he's in charge with. Then he makes tayammum because he's afraid of leaving the spot, because he's afraid of his wealth. أو تعذر إلا بثمن كثير, or he's not able to obtain water except that it's very expensive. So for example, it may be that water is available for you, but it's extremely expensive. Maybe it's like $100 for one small water bottle, right? It's very, very expensive. You have the money, but it's too expensive. If you keep spending the money on it, you'll go broke, right? So if the water price is extremely expensive and he feels that it's too much, then he makes tayammum instead. If it goes extremely high, even though he may be able to purchase it. So he may be able to purchase it, but it's too expensive. Also, if he cannot afford the water, for example, the water is the normal price, it's $1 or 50 cents, right, for a small water bottle. But he can't afford it, he doesn't have the money. So in that case, he is excused and he can perform tayammum. فإن أمكن استعماله في بعض بدنه أو وجد ماء لا يكفيه لطهارته استعمله وتيمم لباقي. If he has or if he finds water that is sufficient for part of his ablution, so if he finds water that's sufficient for maybe half of his wudu, what does he do in this case? Does he make wudu and do tayammum, or does he leave that and just do tayammum? Or does he combine the two? The author here, he says, if he's able to use some water, or he found some water. So for example, you're able to use water on parts of your body. For example, maybe you have a burn on one part of your body. An arm is burnt, right? So now you can make wudu, but you can't wash this arm. What do? He says, you make wudu for the portion that you can make wudu, and you do tayammum for the rest. So for example, half of your body, may be burnt. You make wudu for the first half, and then the second half you make tayammum for that. Or if you have enough water just to wash your face, then you wash your face and you make tayammum for the rest. So you combine with the two. The second condition, الثاني الوقت. The second condition for tayammum, for performing tayammum, is that the time has to enter. And the reason for this is because tayammum is seen as a badal, is seen as ibaha, not a badal for wudu. So tayammum it makes your salah permissible, right? It does not make you purified, right? So it does not make you purified. So it doesn't take all the rulings like wudu. It just makes your salah and your ibadah permissible, right? So there are different rulings for each. So for tayammum, you'll see that there are different rulings. Number one is the time has to come in. So you can't make wudu, you can't make tayammum before the time comes in. So for example, dhuhr is at 12 o'clock. You don't go and you make wudu, or you make tayammum 15 minutes before. You wait till the time comes in, and then you make tayammum, right? And then you make tayammum. فَلَا يَتَيَمَّمْ لِفَرِيضَ قَبْلَ وَقْتِهَا. So you do not make tayammum for the fard salah before its time. وَلَا لِنَافِلَةٍ فِي وَقْتِ النَّهِي عَنْهَا. And you don't make tayammum for a nafila, for a prayer that is sunnah or nawafil, in the time of nahi, in the time of prohibition. So the intent or the meaning is that you make tayammum in the time when it is yajuz for you, when it's permissible for you to pray that salah, and not before it. Number three, the third condition is وَالثَّالِثُ النِّيَّةِ فَإِن تَيَمَّمَ لِنَافِلَةٍ لَمْ يُصَلِّي بِهِ فَرِيضَةً. The third condition is the niyyah. If he has the niyyah for a nafila, then he is not allowed to pray a fard salah. وَإِن تَيَمَّمَ لِفَرِيضَةٍ فَلَهُ فِعْلُهَا وَفِعْلُ مَا شَاءَ من الفرائض والنوافل حتى يخرج وقتها. And if he makes the intention for a fard salah, then he can perform the fard, and he can perform whatever is dun al-fard, whatever is below the fard. So your sunnah, your nawafil, you can perform all of that because you've made the intention for the highest action, for the fard. Similarly, when you make the intention for ghusl, you attain ghusl and you attain wudu at the same time, right? So if you have once you have the intention for the higher prayer or the higher ibadah, the ones that are below that, so nawafil, the sunnah, will be permissible for you to do as well until the time reaches out. حتى يخرج وقتها, until the time reaches out. So for example, you make tayammum for dhuhr, then you can pray the sunnah of dhuhr before, the sunnah of dhuhr afterwards, and you can pray until the time of dhuhr comes out with the same tayammum. After the time comes out, then you need to make a new tayammum for a new salah. So every salah, every fard salah, you have to make a new tayammum, because the tayammum, it permits you to pray, and it is not a substitute for wudu. الرابع, the fourth condition is التراب. فلا يتيمم إلا بتراب طاهر له غبار. Fourth condition is soil. Now he's going to describe the type of soil that you're permitted to use, or the type of dirt. He says, فَلَا يَتَيَمَّمْ, and you do not make tayammum other than using turab that is tahir, turab that is pure, lahu ghubar, and it has particles of dust. So when you put your hand down and you bring it up, there should be some sort of dust on the turab, on the dirt that you're using for tayammum. Also, from here, he says the word tahir, just like, remember when we were talking about wudu, we said that there's different types of water. Similarly, and we mentioned in water, we have tahir, and we have water that is musta'mal, it's used. So the tahara is gone from it. The tuhuriya, saliba minhu. The tuhuriya is removed from it. So if someone uses water, it's not it's not permitted for you to use that water again a second time. Similarly, if someone uses, he makes tayammum with one part of the dirt, of some dirt, then you cannot use that dirt again. You should be using new dirt, and you shouldn't be, or new dust. You should not be using the same one that someone already made tayammum with. Finally, he discusses the things that invalidate the tayammum, and he says, وَيُبْطِلُ التَّيَمَّمُ مَا يُبْطِلُ الطَّهَارَةَ ما يبطل طهارة الماء وخروج الوقت والقدرة على استعمال الماء وإن كان في الصلاة. And whatever invalidates your wudu, your tahara with water, so whatever invalidates your tahara with water will invalidate your tahara with tayammum as well. So we have two types of tahara with water. We have ghusl and we have wudu. So if something happens and you need to perform ghusl, then your tayammum is invalid. You need to perform tayammum again, right? And we can perform tayammum for ghusl and for wudu and for najasa, right? So you can, whatever invalidates your tahara that you make with water, invalidates your tayammum as well. And to add upon that, khuruj al-waqt, the ending of the prayer time. Number two. Number three is the ability to use water. So if you were sick, for example, your hand, it had, there was something on your hand, there was a burn on your hand, or a burn on your body, and you were not able to use the water, then once you become healed and you're able to use that, then you must use the water. So that will invalidate your tayammum. وَإِنْ كَانَ فِي الصَّلَاةِ, and even if you are in salah. So even if you're in salah, and for example, water comes, right? You're praying salah, you made tayammum, and then someone says that there's water here, the water has turned on, or the water has arrived. Then your salah is invalid. You need to break that salah, come out of it, and make wudu, and go back to your prayer. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. If you don't have, the question is, if there's no dirt, if there's no turab, what do? They have ice. So some of the scholars, they mention that any type of surface which is natural, like rocks or ice, some of the madhahib mention ice, some of them mention like a tree or wood, anything that has some sort of, like it's natural, it comes from the earth, or it's like it may have some sort of dust or a ghubar on it, then you can use that. So the best thing to do would, as much as possible, if you have ice, or if you have something that, some like the ground, right, or a wall, right. Some of the madhahib, they permit, using a regular wall, right. Anything that has some sort of ghubar on it, even if it doesn't have ghubar, some of the scholars even mention that it doesn't have to have ghubar, right. That is the condition of the Hanabila madhab. So ittaqullah mustata'at, fear Allah as much as you can. If you're able to find dirt that is proper, then you use that. If not, then you do as best as you can, inshallah.
الناس العجزاء في المستشفى
Yes,
يستعملون الحجر.
yes. They use the rock. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fine. Usually the rocks, they have some sort of dust, natural dust on it, right? That's why they use it, right? And it's also something which is like natural that came from the earth as well. Yeah. Wallahu a'lam. Yeah. Sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.